I'm sure that Whitehead will be quite excited once she sees this. Ryuk mused to himself as he walked toward the wardrobe in the room. Opening it up, he found a total of 7 uniforms. Red shirts and white trousers with quite a futuristic design. As Ryuk grabbed and pulled at the edge of the cloth, it felt like he was trying to pull apart iron. It was incredibly tough and durable. Not bad. He mused to himself as his consciousness dipped into his spatial ring, quickly retrieving the clothes he had brought from the Half-Fallen's one castle. When they were leaving, Ryuk had found a heap of new clothes awaiting him, most likely brought by the Half-Fallen one herself. I didn't even get a chance to thank her for this, he muttered as he began placing the clothes in his wardrobe. 5 minutes later, he had arranged his clothes into the wardrobe, and he slowly moved toward the large wall window. Now, what else am I supposed to do? He mused, looking down through the wall window, where a lot of students could be seen moving around the various structures. Everyone's first option was to go around and familiarize themselves with the newcomers area, most especially the Apex store, where a lot of newcomers could be seen going in and out. The Apex store is not much use for me. I already have an advanced Ice Apex cultivation technique, and as for combat ability, I have quite the amount of offensive techniques now. Perhaps 1 or 2 ice battle techniques or defensive techniques will be nice, but still, that isn't a top priority right now. Ryuk analyzed. As for the idea of checking out the newcomers area, it also wasn't that appealing to him, and the last thing he wanted to do right now was sit down on the sofa and do nothing, even though the idea of watching TV was temptingly nice to his childish heart. Host should just get back to cultivating. Host will need strength to survive here, and Host has yet to practice the new cultivation technique. The system's notification came at just the right time, as Ryuk quickly remembered he had yet to practice the cultivation technique due to the earlier turbulence on their path. Good idea, he replied as he moved away from the window and headed straight for the meditation room. Instead of wasting time walking around, perhaps he could use it to do something more profitable. Settling down in the pool of mana and half-naked, the gigantic book soon appeared in Ryuk's palm, an ancient tome with a cover made of crystallized ice, designed with the imagery of glaciers and snowflakes. Opening it up, Ryuk found icy blue pages that shimmered like frost under the moonlight. The first page was blank, but when he turned to the other side, he found a set of words. Introduction. The primordial frost scripture harnesses the eternal chill of existence, drawing from the apex energy of ice to unlock unparalleled mastery over frost and cold. Only those with a deep affinity for ice can awaken its true potential. Use this with respect, for frost can preserve life as easily as it extinguishes it. The introduction highlighted the immense potential of Ice Apex energy. Ryuk continued to the next page. Steps to cultivate the primordial frost scripture. Step 1. Meditation. Begin in a serene environment, preferably surrounded by ice or snow. Sit cross-legged with your palms open to the sky. Focus on the cold within, drawing apex energy from the air. Even in warmer environments, visualize an endless tundra to manifest the energy. And chant the following consciously. After that, there were a couple of chants Ryuk had no idea how to interpret, but he got the gist of it and moved to the next page. Step 2. Breathing technique. Once your chant has been completed, perform slow, deep inhalations, drawing ice apex energy into your core. Feel the energy flowing through your veins, filling your apex realm within the primordial gate. With each exhalation, release impurities and distractions, allowing your mind to become as still as a frozen lake. Step 3. Hand seals of frost absorption. This is an important and necessary step for the user to fully utilize the technique. It happens naturally without direct control from the user. While in deep or half unconsciousness, the user's fingers will begin mimicking seals that represent the geometry of snowflakes. These ever-changing patterns represent the infinite versatility of frost. This process causes the use of primordial ice laws to cultivate, boosting cultivation levels to abnormal heights. It can only happen when the user enters a flow state, but its effects will undoubtedly be clear. Step 4. Apex Realm Integration. Channel the gathered ice apex energy into your apex realm. Visualize your realm transforming into a frozen paradise, its depths brimming with primordial frost. This will strengthen your connection to the ice element and fortify your cultivation base. Abilities to be obtained in the Grimoire. 1. Cryocataclysm. Unleash a catastrophic explosion of ice apex energy, freezing everything within a vast radius. The ground shatters into glaciers, and the air turns to frost, halting enemies and extinguishing flames. This technique requires immense focus and drains significant energy but can shift the tide of any battle. 2. Frozen Physique. Your body becomes a vessel of primordial frost, immune to frost damage and radiating an aura of cold that saps the strength of foes. This passive ability also increases physical resilience and sharpens your affinity with ice-based techniques. For such a humongous book, Ryuk felt its contents were perhaps too little, but he had already obtained all he needed. He immediately focused his attention. "Time to begin," he voiced while trying to calm his excited heart with deep breaths. His eyes regained ultimate focus, and he shut them tight, absolute calm and silence settling in the room. Slowly, Ryuk raised both hands in the air, and at the pool of mana around him slowly began revolving around him. With hands raised, heart as calm as a lake, the imagery of the chants flashed across Ryuk's memories as his lips parted, and he began. Nivrath Kale my Forsta, Joron Ivirith Kale, Solarth Nithri Vendra, Esei Tor Valor Alas. Nivrath Kale my Forsta, Joron Ivirith Kale, Solarth Nithri Vendra, Esei Tor Valor Alas. Nivrath Kale my Forsta, Joron Ivirith Kale, Solarth Nithri Vendra, Esei Tor Valor Alas. The chants were unending, ringing out clearly through the dimly lit meditation room, and quickly, the rotating ice pool beneath Ryuk began to speed up. Frost appeared all over its surface, soon forming pillars of stalactite ice around Ryuk's figure. A chilling wind echoed through the meditation room, carrying the frosty energy that was spreading all around. Frost spread repeatedly, snaking through the entire room and climbing the walls until Ryuk's surroundings were entirely covered in intense cold and frost. Cold, white air ushered out of Ryuk's lungs with every chant. The more he chanted, the denser the air grew, and the temperature began plummeting to a level even Ryuk found unbearable. From the frost, particles materialized from thin air, swirling into a glowing mist before converging into a sphere of pure condensed ice apex energy above Ryuk's palms. Immediately, the mist of ice apex energy drove into Ryuk's palms. A vein unconsciously bulged on Ryuk's face, and his hands buckled as if lifting the weight of the world. Yet he bore through the pain, his chants growing heavier. The mist immediately increased by hundreds, gathering above Ryuk before suddenly rushing into his palms. The instant they made contact with his palms, the frost dissolved into a luminous liquid that seeped into his veins. A cold, invigorating sensation surged through Ryuk's body, painful as it was chilling, and illuminated every single vein in his body in an icy, radiant blue light. His veins began shimmering like frozen rivers. The more time passed, the more the glow became visible under his pale white skin. The energy flowed steadily, coursing through every inch of him before climbing up his face and disappearing into his primordial gate. Immediately, Ryuk sensed something shocking as he felt his consciousness splitting into two. On one side, he could sense the external sensations of tingling ice and the chilling sound of winds, but on the other, he was now also sitting at the utmost peak of his apex realm. His hands were raised in the same position as his physical body, and frost was pouring out from his hands, surging straight into the mountain below him. Arcane runic lines began appearing all over the apex realm, and the mist from Ryuk's hands began filling them up. So, this is what the apex realm formation is. If I keep pouring ice apex energy into the apex realm, filling up these runes, it will eventually solidify to a level where I would be able to summon it to the physical world. And the day that is achieved is when I officially arrive at the plane of dominion, Ryuk uttered faintly, his understanding of the plane of ascension deepening. Well then, I'll just keep this up as long as I can. He mused as he also closed his eyes in the apex realm, the ice-cold energy seeping into every part of it. In the physical world, time passed quickly, But Ryuk's chanting never ended. The more he continued, the colder the air from his mouth grew, frost forming all over his face, created from sweat instantly freezing due to the intense ice apex energy. It's painful. It's incredibly painful, Ryuk thought, his teeth clattering within him. It was as if his innards were being completely filled with ice blocks. A horrifying sensation even for someone who possessed ice apex energy. His manipulation of ice energy did little to help, as acute veins began filling with every single absorption. Still, he continued until his lips eventually became covered in ice, as did his feet, which stuck to the ground. Cold and frost layered all over his back, and his arms raised into the sky became incredibly heavy as frost also covered them up. His breathing grew labored and heavy, and eventually, Ryuk was unable to continue the chant. His arms dropped to the ground as he collapsed onto his back with a loud groan of pain. Congratulations, host, on your successful awakening of your deep seclusion. The system notification was the first to appear as Ryuk breathed painfully with shut eyes, his chest heaving up and down as if he had just run the greatest marathon of his life. Deep seclusion? Ryuk asked with a raised eyebrow. Yes, host has been in deep seclusion for 3 days now. The system's words caused Ryuk's eyes to bulge to their absolute limit in shock, and instantly he raised his heavy arms to the watch strapped onto his wrist. There were a couple of notifications already, but the one that was beeping in red caught his attention. Interdimensional Gate Class. Begins approximately 10 minutes from now. A map appeared on the screen directing Ryuk. Instantly he shot up to his feet. Damn! Damn! He shouted, ignoring his painful body, and rushed to the bedroom with fast speed. Throwing open the wardrobe door, Ryuk grabbed a uniform, donning it with haste. He had been in ice and cold for 3 days, so one could say he wasn't dirty looking, quite the opposite actually. In an instant, Ryuk raced towards the door but suddenly paused. Then, he turned back as one of the glass panes in the living room opened up. Without hesitation, Ryuk jumped out of it with speed, his figure soaring downward with monumental momentum. His eyes moved to the watch where he could see the map, and with a powerful kick in the air, he changed direction, soaring toward the hall area of the academy with all his speed, braving the blowing air, gravity, and his absolute control of his body to gain a bit of aerial maneuverability. It is said a man only finds out what he could do when faced with the shittiest situation, and right now, Ryuk was finding out his. Wait, is that a flying newcomer? The interdimensional class was a prominent class situated in one of the highest buildings in the class halls. Right now, a total of about 499 students were currently seated silent, their otherworldly arrangement strikingly orderly. On every desk in the area were numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 500. It seemed the students' seats were also arranged in terms of their hierarchy. Naturally, the top 10 got to sit at the absolute front. Another group of 30 seats was behind them where the top 20 to top 50 sat, and so on. Right now, there was a singular seat that was missing, and it was incredibly prominent as it was none other than the seat with the number 10. The class was absolutely silent as in front of the class sat an instructor behind a large desk, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table as all the students watched the gigantic clock by the side of the class. Everyone's attention was fixed as the big hand slowly moved towards 6 o'clock. Somehow, all of the students kept silent because they could see the instructor's face didn't look too good. His gaze darted between the clock and the empty, prominent seat 10. His hand still tapping with every passing second. Some students snickered, knowing full well that whoever the lazy bum who owned seat number 10 was, they would likely go through hell if they dared show their face after the time struck 6 o'clock. Amongst the top 10 seated, Morgane's eyebrows were furrowed as she looked at Ryuk's seat. Her hand tapped impatiently on her watch, and she sighed after checking various texts she had sent, but none of them had been replied to. I've been texting him for the past 3 days, but he's never replied at all. That dickhead must be ignoring me. Talk of growing bigger balls. But now he's planning on being late to the first class too, after having 3 days to do whatever needed to be done by the academy. Just what are you planning, you dickhead? Tick, tick, tick. The larger clock hand slowly made its way towards 6 o'clock. 10 seconds to go, and it would signify the last person as being late. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Suddenly, an incredibly loud droning sound rang out as all of the students, along with the instructor, snapped their gazes to the window, where they saw a figure flying toward the building at horrifying speed. 5, 4, 3. Shatter. The young man's figure smashed straight into the glass, sending shards flying toward the entire class. The students instinctively ducked their heads as Ryuk slammed hard onto the ground, bouncing a couple of times before finally smashing into the clock at the side of the class. The clock shattered into bits, scattering glass particles onto the floor. Ding! A loud sound echoed. Just a second later, the students finally turned their attention to Ryuk, their lips hanging loosely when they looked back at the human-shaped hole in the window he had crashed through. What the hell? Groan. A groan escaped Ryuk's lips as he slowly rose to his feet. His expression morphed when he heard the sound of footsteps approaching. He froze instantly as he looked in front of him and found the instructor, whose blank eyes were staring him up and down. "You were 1 second from being late," the instructor said, and Ryuk couldn't help but sigh in relief. But before he could fully relax, his hand was grabbed as the instructor tapped a gold card on his watch. Ryuk witnessed the notification that appeared on the watch. Minus 500 points. What the? I'm being robbed on day 1? By the bloody instructor, Ryuk thought in his head. The instructor stepped away after deducting his points, saying, "You managed to narrowly avoid being late, but then you also shattered the glass and the clock in the class, along with breaking rules that include soaring through the open air. You can't fly, so you must have jumped out of your room window and glided to this place. That also broke some air rules. 200 points to repair the glass you shattered, 200 points for shattering the clock, and a 100-point fine for gliding in the air. That makes just about 500 points." The instructor explained like a businessman, as Ryuk's expression plummeted. He couldn't help but feel as if he had been somehow ripped off. But could he complain? "Now then, we begin the class," the man said, heading back to his desk. Ryuk could only grumble in his heart as he sighted the seat closest to him and took it. TCH, now 500 points are gone on the first day of class. TSK. So much for being top 10. Ryuk mused in his heart. If there was anything he hated the most, it would be spending his own hard-earned money. He had been that greedy as a core hunter back in grade E, and now watching someone rip him off of 500 points while he was absolutely unable to do anything about it made his greedy heart shed blood. "And I caused such a huge scene too," Ryuk said, looking at the human-shaped figure on the glass. Right now, the majority of the students were looking at him. Some giggled to themselves, while others simply had question marks on their faces, wondering what the hell he could have been rushing to do so crazily. It was clear he didn't plan on being late, or he wouldn't have rushed in so wildly. But then why did he not just wake up earlier? Perhaps he slept off? "Focus, class," the instructor called, diverting attention from Ryuk as the students turned their gaze to the dark-haired man. "I am Instructor Ooze, and I will be your teacher for interdimensional classes throughout your first-year duration as newcomers. I hope we can all walk together, as interdimensional class is a class where we have to cover a lot of topics, and in which a lot of hells have to be gone through by you all. So I need your focus." Did he just say a lot of hell? First, and most important question of all, what is interdimensional? The instructor began as the students all perked their ears and listened carefully to his words. Interdimensional refers to something that occurs between or across dimensions. And dimensions? They refer to various realms of existence, planes of reality, or layers of perception beyond the standard 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time that we experience in our universe. In our world, End-Earth, interdimensional encapsulates everything that involves interdimensional beings or travel, often involving accessing alternate realities or parallel universes. And in most cases, it has to do with anything that is beyond End-Earth, the world we have known. It might come as a shock to you all, but End-Earth isn't the only universe out there. not the only source of life out there, and we Enderths aren't the only race in this universe. A more graphical representation of our world, in terms of this concept, can be best shown with this holographic projection. Instructor Ooze said as the windows to the class were covered by an exterior dark wooden-like curtain, reducing the class to pitch darkness, but then, a powerful light appeared in the front of the class before exploding outward, remnants of stars covering the bodies of the students who looked at the bizarre projection. This is our galaxy, known as the Milky Way galaxy. This is the galaxy Enderth is located in, and this right here, Instructor Ooze said as he pointed to a relatively big but not the biggest planet in the holographic display, is Enderth, he completed as the students narrowed their eyes. Now the no-brainer question is, what about these other planets? Look at this red one, look at the pitch-black one, look at that indigo one, oh, an interestingly blue one. And those tiny ones at the far edge. What are these? Does any one of you know? Instructor Ooze asked, and the students felt their hearts consciously pounding from realization. Yes, these are all interdimensional worlds, just like Enderth, containing their own different races, hierarchies, cultures, and beliefs. Worldviews entirely different from ours. Aliens, you may want to call them? Abominations? Yes, they all exist. Instructor Ooze declared. Some of the students drew gasps, but there were also some who remained silent. Majorly the top 10 geniuses who seemed to have been already aware. And, of course, Ryuk didn't find it surprising. He had already been told by the half-fallen of creatures invading Enderth, and Ryuk had the idea that they might have somehow come through, only if their main worlds were close to Enderth. And now, it was clear to see, Enderth was just a lone world among hundreds and hundreds of other worlds out there. Of course, there are questions. Who are these beings? What do we Enderths know about them? Are they capable of coming into our world? Are they stronger or more powerful than us? Are they a threat? Have they ever invaded before? Can they even invade us? What is their source of power? Is it also apex energy? What are their skills and abilities? What races are there? These questions will be answered in this class, and hence the name Interdimensional Class. I hope you all now understand the reasoning behind the name. I will say, if you're interested in knowing what dark and mysterious forces hide out there in the darkness, what is a threat to us and what is not, what evil powers are inaccessible to us, and just what are aliens and abominations, only one class can fulfill all of your questions. And for that reason, the Interdimensional Class is one of the top 5 most compulsory classes. Missing the class will attract fines, and if you don't have points to pay, you will face punishments. It is an important class that must not be missed, and lateness is not welcomed, the man warned, as the holographic display in the room disappeared, and the coverings over the windows opened up once more, sending brilliant arcs of light through the room. To start the class, we will begin with the manifestations of interdimensionality in our world, Enderth. What links does Enderth have with interdimensional bodies? One of the most inextricable relationships that Enderth has with the interdimensional is the gates. The interdimensional gates, to be exact. What are interdimensional gates? They are portals that allow travel between different dimensions, planes of existence, and alternate realities. They are the way we of Enderth interact with those interdimensional beings who are from the outside world, and the only way they also get to come into our world. Murmurs rose in the crowd, with some of the students revealing faces of disbelief. And, of course, why wouldn't they? This was their first class, and instead of being read or taught something familiar, they were instead given information they had never heard before. It all seemed like the man was spitting fictional realities out of his lips, and the story all seemed made up. Surprisingly, it was like Instructor Ooze could sense the disbelief in the air, and a deep grin appeared on his face that was unmistakable to the students. You know, when the Academy introduced the concept of using holographic presentations to explain things to you newcomers, I didn't like it either. Why? Because I'm a man who believes that only when a kid dips his hand in flames will he ever truly fear the power of flames. I will never believe interdimensional gates exist until I see one with my eyes. And so I expect some of you to be like me, disbelieving until you see one. And so, for that reason, I propose something that may be a little against the Academy's mode of operations for you newcomers. Today, on the first day of your resumption in class, how about we start with a loud bang? The man said as he slowly spread his hands apart, a deep wave of purple energy emanating out from his body and filling up the entire class until it formed a circular dome-like aura around them. Let's check out an actively running interdimensional gate, shall we? What the? Clap. A loud clap resounded through the entire class, shutting the students up, and in the next instant, gigantic black cracks appeared in the room as all the students, including Instructor Ooze, disappeared from the class, fading away into nothing and leaving the class empty. Ooze really be breaking the rules on his first day of class. The voice rang out from a group of instructors who stood exactly around 200 meters away from the hall area of the academy, yet their gazes were still in the direction of the interdimensional class, which was now completely empty of students. They had watched the entire proceeding, and that included Ooze teleporting all of the students. This is what happens when you put an interdimensional fanatic genius in charge of teaching a group of greenhorns. Ooze will never agree to follow the damn academy rules once he gets fired up, a female instructor said with a small giggle, as the instructors also chuckled among themselves. Hopefully, none of the students die on their first day, and Ooze held himself back and didn't throw them straight into a dimensional gate. But I have to agree to this purpose. Instead of creating doubts in the minds of the newcomers, might as well let them see things with their own naked eyes. If the naked reality of the world can be revealed to their green eyes on the first day of school, then breaking the school rules for that is worth it, a muscular-looking instructor said with a sharp tone. Still, Ooze broke an academy rule. Report that to the judges. Another instructor said before he faded away from where he stood, as if he never existed, and the rest of the instructors soon followed, also disappearing. What? What is happening? The thoughts veiled through the minds of the students as in 1 second, they were in the academy calmly sitting down before their instructor, their faces touched in disbelief, and right now, they were in a field with shimmering runes of energy all over the air around them. But then, every student's feeling in their hearts chilled in their minds as they felt an incredibly wild aura brewing behind them. Slowly turning their gaze behind them, the first thing they found was the sight of Instructor Ooze floating in the air, and below his feet was a ginormous gate. Is that a dimensional gate? It was a gate, standing at an imposing height of 5 meters, its arched frame gleaming with a golden hue that dissipated and overthrew brilliant radiance. The gate appeared almost liquid, shifting and shimmering as though infused with starlight. Intricate carvings of ancient symbols and geometric patterns were etched into the surface, pulsing faintly with a soft ethereal glow, a living energy that seemed to be Apex energy, yet seemingly of a different brand to the one the students were familiar with. The center of the door was not solid, neither did it hold a doorknob, but instead had a translucent swirling vortex of light and color, which could be seen, resembling a window of infinite possibilities. Shades of blue, white, and golden spirals merged, creating the illusion of a boundless cosmos woven within the frame. The vortex emitted a low harmonic hum resonating with a sense of mystery and power. Now tell me. Instructor Ooze's voice took them all up from their gaze as he slowly floated down from the sky before landing beside the international gate. Is there anyone amongst you who will see this and still say interdimensional gates don't exist? Is there no one who can't feel the aura emanating from this gate? The aura that you have never sensed before in Endearth. Though like Apex energy, this isn't pure Apex energy either. It's like a different brand, isn't it? One alien, one monstrous, Instructor Ooze said, as all of the students instantly slammed their legs to the ground and shot backward from the gate with speed, causing Instructor Ooze to chuckle with evil laughter. I was formerly thinking there would be some of you brave enough to say you wouldn't believe in interdimensional beings existing until you enter this gate. Yet look at you, all retreating away like children burnt by flames, he said in a mocking tone, before he hummed his throat. Our class for the day will continue here, the man said, as the students' faces displayed shock. The horrifying aura from the gate was causing their hearts to beat out of control, yet they were told they would continue in this area. There are 3 types of interdimensional gates. Instructor Ooze continued before any complaints could be made. Mortal-grade interdimensional gates, Knight-grade interdimensional gates, and Lord-grade gates. As some of you can already guess, this gate before you is only a mortal-grade gate, the lowest of the absolute lowest of grades of gates. Instructor Ooze announced as the students' jaws dropped to the ground. And why is this gate before us the lowest grade? Well, because the creatures that are within are noted to be in the cultivation plane that rivals our early stage of the plane of ascension, and the most powerful being behind this gate is at the peak of the stage of dominion. The man said casually, but the students' hearts only sank further within. These mortal-grade gates are simply basic interdimensional gates accessible to ordinary beings, mortals like you. They have limited power and can only connect to relatively nearby or low-tier dimensions to end Earth. He explained, and in such a situation where fear and shock had overwhelmed the students, the information glued into their heads, and probably would never be forgotten by them for years now. Now, with that done, how about we see the Knight-grade interdimensional gates? Instructor Ooze asked with a distinct smile as he walked down the face of the students and they unconsciously backed away. Tisk, none of you even have some balls. When I was your age and I was shown a mortal-grade gate, I refused to believe anything was inscribed and fought the instructor to let me in. Kinda disappointing how much bravery has been diluted in this current time. Tsh, how sad. For now then, I'll keep things safe for you all as your dear Instructor Ooze. You all will only be allowed to relate with mortal-grade gates, so let's get back to class. He said as Instructor Ooze raised his hand up once more. A deep wave forming around the various students, and then he clapped. And instantly, everyone faded away from the area, leaving the gate remaining. The interdimensional class continued for close to 10 hours straight. But through it all, none of the geniuses felt the slightest bit of boredom settling in their hearts. Every single strand of formation was something they had never encountered before. Even the top 10 geniuses, who were already aware of the existence of the gates, were enraptured by the new information. This was something their leaders had never mentioned to them. Instructor Ooze knew a great deal about interdimensional gates, and he told them a lot about it, including how to identify the grade of an interdimensional gate, what creatures are commonly around these gates, how to close an interdimensional gate, and different ecosystems that are most common within the gates. Most captivating, however, was the information about the type of alien races that were exiting the majority of the primordial gates, as well as the abilities and powers of these alien races. This will be where this class ends, Instructor Ooze said after 10 long hours as he rose to his feet. In the next class, who knows? Perhaps you all will be entering a live, low-level dimensional gate and getting real practical experience with all you've learned today, he completed before leaving the class. Immediately, a notification appeared on the watch of every student. First class completed. Break continues until the message for the next class is given. Ho! Loud exhales echoed out from the desks as the students tried to calm their reeling minds. Murmurs grew with discussions amongst each other, and eventually, some of the geniuses began to rise and leave the class. Today, they had learned something almost unbelievable, yet it showed that their entrance to the Ascension Academy and their duration there would be anything but boring. Some of them were already eagerly anticipating the next class, unable to wait to enter a true dimensional gate, even though they weren't sure it would actually happen in the next session. Ho! I managed to complete the class. Ryuk mused to himself as he collapsed onto his seat. He had avoided being late on the first day, and even though 500 points had been ripped from him, he felt that more would have been lost if he had arrived late. He knew it would have been worth it, as arriving late might have meant missing the experience of appearing before a dimensional gate. 500 points may not have been enough for him to see one otherwise. So one could say coming here today was worth it. He had yet to take a complete breath when suddenly, the sound of a throat clearing rang out beside Ryuk. Slowly, he turned his gaze to the side and found a pair of golden eyes staring at him, faint anger rolling within them. Hi! Don't hi me, you dickhead, Morgane said with a loud huff, her body unconsciously flickering with golden energy. She clenched her hands into fists, sending a shiver through Ryuk's heart. What's with the extra positive vibe? Did I do something wrong? He asked, not understanding the reason for her anger. You, dickhead, ignored my texts for 3 days, and then you ask if there's something wrong? She asked while snickering. Ryuk turned his attention to his watch and noticed an inbox marked Morgaine, X65. Damn, she sent 65 messages. Ryuk thought, surprise evident on his face. Morgaine noticed his reaction, confirming that Ryuk truly might not have seen her messages. For real? I never knew I even received any messages from you. I haven't checked the Apex watch at all for the past 3 days or done anything. He replied, genuinely sorry. Morgaine huffed coldly in response. Whatever. Text me when you get back to your room, she commanded before standing and disappearing out of the class. Only now did Ryuk take a proper exhale. 65 messages in 3 days. What's her deal anyway? He muttered blankly to himself before also rising and heading outside the class. He had yet to fully leave when suddenly, he felt an arm wrap around his neck, the smell of blood assaulting his nose. How's it going, little blind thing? The feminine voice rang out. Without needing to turn his head, Ryuk already recognized the face. It was none other than the young Mistress Velora, the one from Grade E who had almost ripped Ryuk's neck off for her accidentally knocking into him. If I remember well, the last time we met, you were a few inches from ripping open my head with your claws. And now we're suddenly friends. Ryuk asked with cold eyes as Velora snorted. And who said we're friends? Your hand is over my neck, Ryuk replied, and Velora got the message, withdrawing her hand with a humph. Many beg for my hands over their necks, and none ever receive it, Velora said, and Ryuk chuckled mockingly. Thank the devil I'm not one of them, he replied, continuing his walk. Yet Velora keenly followed him. You've been louder than the last time we met. The little blind one I knew was a meek-looking sheep, Velora said, her brows furrowing. Ryuk only shrugged his shoulders. He had always been who he was. He knew when to go meek and when to recognize his own value. He knew how to stop people from overstepping their boundaries, especially someone who would have gravely injured or ended his life if not for the timely intervention of Duke the Lion. How's Duke the Lion? Is something wrong with him? Ryuk suddenly asked, and Velora raised an eyebrow. He's fine. Why would you think there's something wrong with Duke the Lion? I'm guessing if you're hovering around me, then it must be because you have a message to deliver from him. Now that I know he's fine and you seemingly have nothing to deliver to me, I wonder. Why are you still following me around, Velora? Are you trying to get me in trouble? Ryuk asked in suspicion. Hehe. You think so? Well, there is quite the number of gays on us right now. Looking around him, Ryuk could see there were quite a few gazes on him for being together with Velora. And truly it was suspicious, a human with a vampire? Especially the human who had come into class after knocking straight on from the windows. Seems like you're the one responsible for that, not me. What were you doing to be late anyway? Kubota asked as Ryuk shrugged and ignored the question. Leave Velora, he said, and she humphed. You're going to the dorm room, are you not? I'm also going back to my room. Any problem with that? She asked. Okay then, at least give me a little space, Ryuk said as Velora smiled sinisterly before closing the gap beside them until her shoulder brushed against his. I walk anywhere I want to. Do you have a problem with that? In the end, he could only let her be as he continued on his way, but not without his thoughts occasionally getting poked by her every second, and Ryuk replied to averting with a shrug or silence. He hadn't thought Velora was such a talker, as she kept chatting the entire way until they arrived before their dorm building. Don't worry too much about our parting, little blindy. I'll be there to give you company tomorrow, too. Hee, she said, as he humphed before disappearing into the elevator. I hope this is the last time I see that pale face of yours, he muttered before he remembered something and clicked his tongue in displeasure. I forgot to take the teleporter again. Still, I almost completely lost myself in cultivation. I could have completely missed this class due to the technique. It didn't even seem like I had spent an hour at all. Ryuk murmured with furrowed eyebrows. He knew today had been a close call. If he had told the instructor he had been cultivating, they would never have believed he had been cultivating for 3 days. It was truly a close call that Ryuk didn't find comforting. But then, 3 days of cultivation with such an advanced technique should yield much. Activate stats, he ordered as the golden notification flashed before his gaze. Stats. Strength. 130. Agility. 130. Endurance. 130. Intelligence. 130. Charisma. 50. Luck. Null. Mana. 200. What the hell? Ryuk wondered in shock as he looked at the golden notification panel in front of him, especially at the mana tab. I increased my mana capacity by 90 in just 3 days? Host's primordial ice scripture is a very strong cultivation technique. Even now, Host has yet to reach its full abilities and true absorption power. The system stated this as Ryuk's eyes flashed with joy and anticipation. Then I can't wait. The only problem is staying conscious and aware of the passing time, so it doesn't interfere with class. Ryuk mused and soon turned his attention to his Apex watch. The first thing that appeared was the dozens of messages from Morgane, and the most eye-catching words to Ryuk were none other than dickhead, along with a couple of surprisingly worried messages. It seemed she had been pretty worried after not seeing his message for 2 days straight and him also being late to class. I'm fine, thank you. And hi. Ryuk texted back to her before switching to the watch's main interface. There were already a couple of applications like Newcomer Rules and Regulations, Newcomer Area Navigator, Friends List and Request, and a couple of others Ryuk didn't understand nor was he curious about. Heaving a little sigh, he opened up the law interface and quickly began reading. In a little less than 10 minutes, he finished everything up and was about to turn his Apex watch off when a notification rang out. Morgane. Hi dickhead. Wanna check out the cafeteria? The notification rang aloud as Ryuk furrowed his eyebrows. He was just about to type a no, when, Gruum. His stomach rumbled in protest, and Ryuk could only roll his eyes before typing back. Sure. I guess it won't kill me if I go out a little. I've got nothing to do here anyway. He mused, exiting his dorm room and moved out of the building, where hundreds of students were seen pouring in and out. Coming out the gate, he paused. Would I meet her directly at the cafeteria or ask where she is and go together? He thought. Dickhead. The voice suddenly appeared behind his ear, and he turned to find a snickering Morgane behind him. What? You were planning to sit in through the entire break from class? Morgane asked as Ryuk nodded. If not for his rumbling stomach, he truly would have. So you didn't want to go because you were starving? Ryuk asked with furrowed eyebrows, and Morgane nodded with a giggle. Of course. I can't sit down at home all day, and, I thought you might be starving, she said as Ryuk looked at her before clicking his tongue and resuming his walk. What? Morgane asked as she hurried after him. Has anyone ever told you that you suck at lying? He asked as Morgane turned fully red, and Ryuk chuckled at her. He had noticed how she said, something he would never associate with Morgane, and her face slightly reddened too, so he could easily guess there was something wrong. But now it couldn't be any clearer. Well, no. I've never had to lie to anyone before, Morgane said as Ryuk snickered. You could have just said you were addicted to my presence and needed me to fill your addiction. You'd save yourself some time. You. TCH, I'll never get addicted to the dickhead that is you, even in 1,000,000 years from now. Humph. Morgane said with a loud snort, and Ryuk only rolled his eyes. Somehow those words felt so familiar. Okay then, fallen princess. Follow tightly behind me, Ryuk said as Morgane giggled. You suck at be a knight. Your voice is so plain, and tiny like that of a little spoiled girl. Morgane mockingly replied and Ryuk slipperily replied. A little spoiled girl like you, right? You dickhead. The cafeteria was one of the largest buildings in the area, and contrary to what Ryuk had thought, there were actually a lot of newcomer students in the cafeteria in 2s and 3s. He had thought cultivators needed no reason to eat, as the mana was enough, and Ryuk's own weird body might be the only exception. But then, he noted that some of the students didn't seem to come here to eat but to talk instead. Almost nobody was eating alone. "It's right there." Morgana's voice echoed beside his ears. She turned to the side and disappeared around a corner. When Ryuk followed, he appeared before a serving area, where a couple of older-looking women wearing the academy's uniform were standing. "Hi! What would you like? Here is the list of what is currently available," they explained to Morgana, who picked up the little leaflet, her golden gaze flickering through it with speed. In 3 seconds, she had her answer. "The Void Dragon steak, for 2 people," she completed, and the lady stared at Ryuk, who made no visible sign of refusing. She smiled before instantly getting to work. It took less than 30 seconds for her to reappear. A tray with a well-covered dish was handed to both of them, and Morgana collected it before they moved to a more secluded place in the dining area. The Void Dragon steak was a thick-cut steak from a particularly dark-colored meat with an umami flavor. Alongside it was the nebula sauce. When Ryuk took a bite, the meat was juicy, tender, with savory sweet aftertastes. Even the food is better than the ones in the Arisen Fallen Hall, he thought to himself with flashing eyes, and his eating speed unconsciously increased. "You didn't seem to argue against me choosing the dish," Morgana suddenly said as Ryuk shrugged his shoulders. "I didn't have anything in mind earlier, and I don't mind any dish, so long as it fills my hunger," he replied, and Morgana couldn't help but click her tongue. As barbaric as ever. "Hey, Ryuk, I have a question that's always lingered on my mind for a while now, but I didn't know whether to ask or not," Morgana suddenly said, and Ryuk nodded. "Just ask away. If I can't answer, I simply won't." "During your battle with Ignatius, at the last second, there was a gigantic snake that covered you up and took the brunt of Ignatius' flame for you. The white, snowy-like snake," Morgana said as Ryuk's eating speed slowed down. "What is with it? Is it a skill of yours? To summon a big snake to act as a shield? It doesn't really seem like a skill of though. More of a living beast's. So, if it's not a skill, then where has it been since then? I haven't seen you, nor noticed anything like that around you after that day," Morgana voiced out, and Ryuk could tell she had been holding the question back for as long as she could, until eventually, she could no longer keep it in. "It's not a it, it's a her. And who knows, you might be seeing her soon," he replied before continuing his meal. Morgana stared at him for a while before she giggled. "It's the first time I've seen you so protective of something. Even defending her pronoun," she said, but he only shrugged. Still, it had been finalized to Morgana. The snake she saw was a real entity, and if she hung around Ryuk enough, she would eventually encounter it again. While she was curious in where she currently was, looking at Ryuk and how he had answered the question before, he doesn't seem to want to talk much of the topic, so she could only rein in her curiosity for now. Silence passed over the table as Ryuk felt his hunger ceasing with every bite, and with the last spoonful of the Void Dragon meat, his hunger was completely satiated. Suddenly, R-I-N-G. The sound of a loud ring echoed out from the area as Ryuk unconsciously turned his attention to the Apex watch. Same for Morgana and every student in the room. New class alert. Combat mastery class in an hour from now. "Oh, it's time for the next class," Morgana said as Ryuk nodded his head before tapping on the notification and stopping its ceaseless ringing. "So, planning to come late to this one too?" she asked, and he rolled his eyes. "I never choose to come late. I never will. So, I'll be getting to the class early this time," he replied, as Morgana chuckled and finished up her food before rising to her feet. They both placed their dishes where the dirty dishes were to be placed. Exiting the building, they headed, of course, to the Academy Hall, where there were already a couple of students also moving too. Combat mastery class. Huh? I don't know what it is all about, but the combat should mean I'll be getting to stretch my bones soon, Ryuk thought to himself as they soon headed into the academy. With the aid of the navigation map, they appeared before a widely open door. Ryuk was about to step in with Morgana behind him when he suddenly stopped and took 2 steps backward. "Hey, what's wrong?" Morgaine asked, looking at Ryuk, who had his gaze fixed on the open doors. Slowly, he dipped his hand forward, and suddenly the surface of the door rippled like a wave on water. Some students already disappeared into it, but the others instantly paused once they saw what was happening to Ryuk. They all couldn't help but also notice the surface rippling. What the hell? There's like a teleporting vortex? A student mused, but then another muttered, "Don't sweat it. The pointer on the map said this is the right place, so it definitely is where we should be. And a school like the Ascension Academy isn't above having a class in another area connected with a vortex, is it?" A student asked before also stepping into the vortex and disappearing. "Hey, system, can you sense any harm from beyond?" Ryuk asked. "None, host, but be careful." Only then did Ryuk step into the vortex with Morgaine. When they opened their eyes, they were met with a crowd of students gathered on a wide grassy plain. The area was a mini-world of short grasses, with students walking up and down aimlessly. Some of them had already taken their seats on the ground. Unlike the interdimensional classes, where there were well-arranged seats denoting people's hierarchy, there was no such thing in this grassy plain world. Ryuk eventually sat down in a more reclusive area and simply waited patiently. The students' numbers kept increasing and increasing until, eventually, they had almost filled this grassy plain. Just as their numbers reached 500, a presence appeared in the grassy plain. A presence whose mere appearance was enough to silence all of them, appeared. He was an imposing figure whose very aura exuded dominance and fear. Towering at a height of 6 feet 8 inches, the man's sheer stare commanded immediate attention, casting a long, intimidating shadow over the students. His body was a masterpiece of war, broad shoulders, barreled chest, and heavily muscled arms bulging with veins beneath his tight-fitting instructor's uniform. But what was most chilling about him was his face, particularly the deep gash that ran diagonally from his left brow to his jawline, narrowly missing his eye. The man's eyes were piercing crimson, but unlike vampire eyes that seemed like they contained blood, his looked like they were filled with scorching, furious flames. Jet-black hair streaked with snow-white strands flapped eerily around his face. "What the hell?" Ryuk asked in shock, his heart beating disjointedly fast within his chest. For reasons he didn't understand, cold, white air began surging from his lungs, and sweat poured down his face. This man. Warning! Warning! Host has come across a figure with an indomitable battle will and is capable of instinctively eliminating Host from existence. Host is advised to be ultra careful. "Everyone, sit!" the man suddenly commanded, his voice deep and gravelly, like a distant thunderstorm. The second he completed his words, Ryuk felt the air shook. It was like gravity had increased to a specific level, forcing those who were still standing to drop to their butts or knees. "Is this the combat mastery instructor?" Some of the students thought, their hearts turning cold. This man was unlike Instructor Ooze. It was as though they were standing before a general of death, ready to reap their lives. And truly, when they thought of the words combat mastery, they realized no other figure could embody it better than him. With everyone seated and the place reduced to silence, only then did the man inhale deeply before walking circularly around all of them. Every single one of his steps was incredibly heavy, and the students turned their heads, following his every move. He was like a predator stalking them. Even the slightest loss of focus on him might just seize away their lives. "I am Instructor Dravik Kane, your combat instructor for your newcomer year. Without wasting any more time, let's get into it," the man said, his words not containing the slightest bit of sugarcoating and incredibly direct. "Firstly, you may have noticed the combat mastery class is unlike any other class, where you have seats and boards. This here is instead an outside world of grassy plains, very unlike any other classes," he said, as the students nodded. This was truly unusual. There is no other reason except that the combat class needs neither a table nor a desk. Even this grassy plain isn't the true combat class either, the instructor continued. "Disgusting it is to me to even want to take the first class here. But since you all are greenhorns and the principal just seemed to have a sweet tongue, I eventually agreed. The students didn't know whether to smile or not at this statement. The only true combat class is the battlefield, holding the body of the weak and the broken weapons of the strong. A place that forgives no weakness. But just because this is a grassy world doesn't mean I will accept the slightest inkling of weakness from any of you. My rules for combat remain the same. Victory is carved in blood and bone. The battlefield does not forgive weakness, and neither will I. Here, you will be trained not only to fight but to survive, dominate, and endure in the most brutal and unforgiving circumstances imaginable. Even if the academy doesn't permit a true battlefield, I will forge one just for you all, the man said as he completed a 360-degree walk and eventually returned to their front. For today's first class, we'll be taking things at the barest minimum. The focus will be the brutality of war, the man said. A truly bizarre topic to start the first day of class. But among them, none was dumb enough to utter a single word against it. War, Instructor Kane suddenly growled, is not a battlefield. It is a beast, vicious, unrelenting, and hungry. It feeds on your fear, your weakness, and your hesitation. Forget the stories of glory you've heard. Forget the songs of valor given a beat by the slamming of spears. War doesn't and never will care for your honor or your name. War comes for one thing, which will be our ultimate focus throughout this year. Instructor Kane paused before completing his statement. Survival. That is all that war cares for, survival. And survival itself comes with a cost you will all soon come to learn. The first lesson of the brutality of war is death without discrimination. War is not a duel, it's chaos incarnate. The strong fall to arrows they never see. The weak survive by sheer accident. Your dearest friends become corpses, and enemies become nightmares that haunt you in your darkest moments. In war, death doesn't knock. It takes. Many greenhorns love the idea of being warriors. They adore the thought of their names being sung and their actions of bravery being mentioned. They carry with them this naivety into a coming war. And then they wonder why they fall? Instructor Dravik Kane's voice resonated through the quiet grassy plain. Let me ask you, greenhorns, a question. When you stand before a horde of mutated beasts threatening to drown the entire world in pain and death, tell me, on that precipice of the battle, what do you see yourself as? Heroes, no? Guardians, no? Defenders, no? Noble warriors, no? Instructor Kane said, and some of the students unconsciously agreed in their hearts. Truly, that is what those who stand before others, facing opposition and risking death, are often called. You're wrong, and being wrong in war means being dead. Instructor Kane's voice came at just the right time when they all silently agreed in their hearts. His thick, growling tone was enough to make their hearts almost spiral out of control. There are no heroes in war. If you get into war, sense of morality is a luxury, for there is no good or evil, only victory and defeat. You'll face choices that no course or teaching can prepare you for. Kill or be killed, sacrifice or survive, or strips you of morality and leaves you bare. In the end, you become nothing more than a beast among beasts. So etch this well into your skulls. There are no heroes in war. There are only killers. And do you know what does the majority of killing? He asked, pausing slightly before continuing. Weapons. For that reason I, Instructor Dravik Kane, will raise no heroes among you. I don't train soldiers. I forge weapons. I create the coldest killers to have ever lived. So, if you sit before me now, you beg for me to turn you into a killer. If you cannot accept that, leave now. Was it because they all agreed with his ideas? Was it because they were now willing to become killers? Absolutely not. It was because to stand before Instructor Dravik Kane was like standing before a hungry beast. One wrong move and you die. Even when they knew well in their hearts it would be ridiculous for an instructor to kill a student, none of them could still move from the fear in their hearts. Before this beast of a man, even the rules, which were so clear, seemed like nothing but ephemeral whispers. Something that became null before him, Good. I trust that means your silence shows your willingness, he said, and the slightest hint of a smile finally appeared on the man's face in the shape of a grin. But with his scars, it only made him look even more savage and sinister. When we talk of war, we talk about its brother, he continued. What is the brother of war? Death? Sacrifices? Victory and loss? He asked rhetorically as they all silently listened. No, none of these is the true brother of war. The true brother of war itself is pain. If war is a beast that consumes everything in its path, not divided between good or evil, then pain is its shadow, always following, always reminding. Together, they are the twin forces that shape the battlefield, carving warriors from flesh and forging strength from suffering. The relationship between pain and war. Firstly, pain is war's herald. Pain announces the arrival of war. It begins first with the tension before battle, the fear that coils in your gut, the tightening of muscles as weapons are drawn, and the raw agony of the first wound. Pain whispers, "The beast is here. Prepare to endure." Instructor Kane whispered to them, further striking their nerves. Secondly, war teaches through pain. The sting of failure, the ache of loss, the searing burns of wounds, all are lessons etched into the soul. Pain hardens the body and mind, forging resilience and endurance in those who survive. Without pain, war would be chaos. With it, war becomes discipline. Thirdly, if survival is truly all that matters in war, then its only true price is pain. In war, every victory is paid for in pain. And pain, it is either your own or someone else's. Pain is the toll extracted for every step forward, every life spared, and every battle won. It is the brother that reminds you survival is not without cost. Fourthly, pain knows no sides. It strikes friend and foe alike, an impartial force that binds all warriors to the same grim reality. On the battlefield, pain erases the differences between enemies, reducing them to their most primal selves, creatures clinging to life. And finally, pain is not just suffering. It is transformation. It is through pain that each and every one of you here will evolve into a true warrior. Each scar will be the mark of your survival, a testament to the battles you have endured and overcome. It will strengthen your resolve, force you to become the best adapter, and fuel your hunger to emerge victorious. Today, I want each and every one of you to bear in your mind my perspective of pain and war. On your feet and repeat after me until you burn it into your skulls. The man commanded. They all rose to their feet as Instructor Dravik's hand moved to his chest, clenched into a fist. The students repeated his actions. War is my brother, but pain is my blood. War is my brother, but pain is my blood. It courses through me, fueling my rage and sharpening my instincts. The voice in my ear that whispers, "Keep going." It courses through me, fueling my rage and sharpening my instincts. The voice in my ear that whispers, "Keep going." Without pain, war is a beast without teeth, a battle without meaning. Without pain, war is a beast without teeth, a battle without meaning. For that, I do not fear them, I embrace them. For that, I do not fear them, I embrace them. For pain is not my enemy. It is my ally, my strength, and my proof that I'm still surviving. For pain is not my enemy. It is my ally, my strength, and my proof that I'm still surviving. If I may ask you all, what is the nature of your enemy? Instructor Kane said as he stepped forward toward the students, and unconsciously, each of them stepped backward. You, Alpha, right there, Instructor Kane said as he appeared before the werewolf guy with crimson eyes. You have a family, don't you? A pack awaiting your return, don't you? Instructor Kane asked, and the guy replied, Yes, I do. And then Instructor Kane left him, moving to another student and grabbing him by his shoulder. This student was from the aquatic race with a blue crown on his head. And you have grand dreams, do you not? You have a future, don't you? Perhaps one brighter than the majority of the ones in this place, don't you? Instructor Kian asked, and the blue-haired guy also nodded his head. I do. Well then, it's a fact. We all have our dreams, our families, and our futures. We can envision them and dream them. Is there anyone who thinks I'm wrong? Instructor Kian asked, and everyone kept silent. Of course, he was right. Even Ryuk himself had a dream of hunting down whatever killed his uncle and getting back all of his body parts. Everyone here had a dream, and even if they didn't, they had a family to return to. And even if they didn't have a family, they had the vision of their future deep in their dreams. It was undoubtable. But tell you what, your enemy doesn't care. He cares not for your dreams, your family, or your future. He exists solely to destroy you. That is the nature of your enemy, to destroy you, the man said, his growl reaching a level that shook their hearts. You dare hesitate before him? He never does. You falter before him. He rips away your life, along with your dreams and future, perhaps even your family, if given the chance. If you have not been told before, then let me be the first to break it to you. Endearth is a battlefield with enemies in every nook and cranny you can find. To survive, you must become what your enemies fear the most. And that is a weapon. Sharp, unyielding, merciless. That is why I raise no soldiers. I raise weapons forged for the sole purpose of killing. I raise Endearths who are sharp, unyielding, and merciless. In short, I raise survivors. Through death, I will nurture you to live. Instructor Kane said, taking hold of his wrath. Then he paused, his voice receding to a much lower tone. But understand, no lesson I teach you can match the cold truth of war itself. You will only learn through blood, yours or someone else's. The battlefield will not be a test. It will be your execution or your triumph. And you will carry the scars, both on your body and your soul, for the rest of your life. He completed, as attention was drawn toward the scar on the side of the man's face, which suddenly began flaring with dim crimson lights. Every word of his was the cold, harsh reality they would witness for themselves. He was a living embodiment of what he said, eliminating the slightest trace of doubt from their hearts by his mere presence. Brutality is not savagery. It is instead decisiveness. It is understanding that mercy is not weakness, but sometimes a dagger to your heart is kinder than letting your enemy suffer. Brutality ensures survival, and survival is the only victory that matters. Remember this. The battlefield, though dangerous, is not your enemy. It is your forge. War will break you, bend you, and beat you until there is nothing left but steel, sharp and unyielding. If you survive, you will not be greenhorns like you all are now. You will be something more. You will be true Endearths. But first, you must learn to embrace the brutality of war, or it will embrace you in your grave. In our next class, come prepared for true pain. Prepare yourselves well for it, and steel your hearts and minds. Only then will the combat class begin. He said as he turned his back and walked forward, a golden vortex appearing in the space before him. He stepped into it, disappearing from the grassy plain. The vortex remained, waiting for the students. Watching the man leave, 100% of the students suddenly collapsed onto their backs, heaving heavily. Only now did the toll of standing before a warrior take its toll on them, as their bodies curled down under the ruthless pressure. Then Ryuk himself was no exception. The man's presence wasn't affecting them because he was so strong. It was his overwhelming will that pressed onto theirs, crushing completely, draining away and dissipating life from them. Ryuk could only wonder, if the man could truly enforce his directive will onto one of their foes, then the probability of them imploding to nothing would probably reach the 90% and above mark. I can only wonder what type of hell he must have walked through and survived. Now the scars seemed to make more sense. He thought to himself as the students remained heavily breathing until, after an hour, they finally mustered the little energy to rise up to their feet and slowly exit the gate. They had thought the interdimensional gate was already tough to deal with, but the combat class was like another level above. And yet, the combat class had yet to even begin. It would begin in the next class, and as for how hellish it would be, they would all be finding out very soon. Combat class ends. All classes done for the day. New classes begin tomorrow at 6 o'clock. What type of class will be announced before then? The notification rang out through their Apex watches, as Ryuk eventually regained himself. He quickly walked through the gate and immediately slithered away before Valora could find him, making his way to his dorm room. Arriving within, he was surprised to find the door was actually half opened, and instantly his gaze changed to one of surprise and faint displease. There's someone in my dorm room? Ryuk's head buzzed a bit, looking at the open door. Someone had infiltrated his room, but then his rising anger faded away as he heard the sound. Realizing whoever had opened his door was still inside, he calmly entered before shutting it closed. Calmly, and almost silently, he headed to his bedroom, only to pause at the sight of a figure standing with a vacuum in hand. Ryuk stood silently for 10 seconds straight, with the girl being oblivious until she eventually turned his way, raising her head to sight Ryuk looking at her with a raised eyebrow. "Aye," she said, but then hurried forward, kneeling before Ryuk on both her feet. "Hello, you must be the inner student, Ryuk. I am Patootie, your dearest outer student messenger to help with all of your menial chores, including cleaning your room, washing your dirty clothes, ironing them, and keeping everything orderly. Is there something you want to request of me?" she asked, as Ryuk looked at her dazedly for quite a long while. What Ryuk was looking at was none other than her ears, and he had to say he had never seen ears like those before nor even heard of them. She was a white-skinned female, dots of pink on the sides of her cheeks close to her nose. She had big, doe-like pink eyes, sparkling with innocence and curiosity, one of the most captivating parts of her appearance. She had a small, button-like nose and a shy smile as she looked at Ryuk. She was dressed in a pastel-colored maid outfit, pink in color, adorned with lace and tiny floral patterns. Her ears were long, covered in fluffy-looking white fur, with delicate pink undertones in the inner ears. Straightening his neck behind her figure, Ryuk could easily see the fluffy round tail peeking out from behind, making a single word appear in his head. "You're a rabbit?" he asked, his displease seemingly fading away as the girl blushed. "You make it sound so bad when you say it that way," she whispered, but Ryuk could still pick it up. "I am not a rabbit. I'm a Lapinian," she said, but Ryuk already had his confirmation. "Hey system, what is she? She looks like a Lapinian." The word means hair in an ancient language, and the Lapinians are an elegant and fitting race known for their agility, grace, and charm. But I'm 100% sure. She's not a Lapinian host. She's a rabbit, with a bloodline so pure it allowed her to regain humanoid features. And so for that, everyone, including herself, mistakes her for a Lapinian, when she's in fact a true mutated beast. The system explains something that even she and the Ascension Academy itself might not even be aware of. A bloodline so pure it allowed her to regain humanoid form, and even she is not aware. How interesting, but still. "Tell me something, Patootie," Ryuk called as her ears twitched. "Yes. How do I cancel you as my messenger?" he asked, as Patootie's eyes dimmed on hearing Ryuk's words. "Another one," she thought to herself, this time biting her lips. She had been refused by close to 10 geniuses now, who immediately refused her and chose another servant. And now it seemed her 11th try would still be a failure. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked as her nose wriggled. And then, "Wea waho." She actually burst into tears, causing Ryuk's expression to morph into one of confusion. Didn't the Academy say one was free to release the servants from their bond by refusing them? His decision should have made her happy, so why was she tearing up? "I have tried and failed 10 times now. It's so saddening to be refused so many times. It's not true. I'm different. Wawa." She continued crying through her tears, which soon formed a small pool so fast. "Refused so many times? What kind of idiot would refuse a cutie Patootie like you?" Ryuk couldn't help but ask, as Patootie paused in her tears, her eyes twitching as she turned her big eyes to him. "You don't know?" she asked. "No what?" he replied. But she was about to respond before she bit her lips, screaming out loud. "Then why? Why did you want to cancel me as your messenger?" she asked, bursting into tears once more. "If I stop you from being my messenger, won't you be free then? That'd give you more time to focus on other things," he said to her, but she shook her head. "No, it doesn't work like that. I'll just have to find another person. And we have just 3 days to have a person choose us. If we get refused, we have to find another person, or we'll lose our cultivation rewards and be even more reduced. There are just a few hours before I'll fall down to the bottommost bottom of the ranking." "Wah!" she cried out loud as Ryuk managed to piece things together and understand the gist of it. So while there's a servant attributed to each and every one of them, and they can refuse, the outer students won't be free still but will have to find another person. Ryuk thought, knowing well that could have been his fate if he had ended up moving to the Ascension Academy directly. A bit of pity entered into his heart as he looked at the rabbit girl drowning in her tears, and eventually he sighed. "Okay then, I'll take you as my servant." Ryuk eventually agreed, as Patootie raised her head, shock flashing in her big pink eyes. She asked, What did you just say?" she asked, trembling. "I said I'll make you my personal messenger. That'll help you, right?" he asked, as Patootie looked at his face for a long while, pausing in her steps. He accepted me? I've finally been accepted?" she thought to herself, and in the next instant, she suddenly moved as she appeared before Ryuk as fast as lightning, and before he could react, her hands soared around his waist as she hugged him tightly. Thank you. I didn't really do a good thing, did I? She really is short." The thought echoed in Ryuk's head as he looked down at the bunny girl, who was just around 1.2 meters tall, her fluffy pink hair barely at the line of his sight. "It's fine. Now, can you free my waist?" he asked after feeling a bit uncomfortable. Patootie stepped back like a frightened rabbit before the biggest smile appeared on her face. "Thank you. You won't be disappointed, I swear," she said, disappearing into the bathroom. Moments later, she returned with a mop, most likely to wipe away the pool of tears in the room. Ryuk simply shrugged helplessly before moving to the living room. While he would have loved to have his privacy, meaning not having a servant, and was used to living alone and doing his chores, he realized having a servant might not be entirely useless. If she could handle his chores, it would give him more time to focus on other things. Besides, he couldn't leave the cute bunny girl falling to the bottom of her ranking or turn her out after she had drowned in tears. So he could only reluctantly agree in the end. But still, I don't understand why she was turned down by so many geniuses, he thought to himself, recalling her words about being rejected multiple times. She was a cute-looking and beautiful girl, the perfect housemaid. Then why had so many geniuses turned her down? The reason is simple. The system panel suddenly appeared in front of his gaze. While the Lepinians are a cute-looking and beautiful race, they have a dark side. A dark side? Ryuk asked, frowning. Yes, a dark and well-known side. Their very existence robs away the luck of other races around them. For instance, a person who wakes up early at 7 o'clock every day to go to school will suddenly start waking up at 10 o'clock and arriving late once they have a Lepinian around them. A person who has never fallen from bed before can suddenly plummet down from the bed. Or a person who has never slipped on steps before will suddenly find themselves tumbling down every now and then. This is what is noticed by those who allow a Lepinian close to them. Suddenly, a series of bad luck starts assaulting them, and eventually, it is discovered that the one causing it is the Lepinian themselves. Their existence robs away the luck in their surroundings. Only a fool or someone strong enough to ignore their bad luck effect would allow a Lepinian close to them. So, of course, the geniuses are going to turn her down to avoid the bad luck her race brings with them. The system explained as Ryuk narrowed his eyes. That's truly bizarre. Yes, it is. It's called a racial flaw, and each race has its own flaws. Even the humans taught Host adores so much. Except that the majority of them are very good at hiding theirs. But Host has nothing to worry about. The girl is not a Lapinian as everyone thinks. She only looks like one. Her true form is a mutated lunar rabbit, the system replied. Ryuk could only shrug. Even if she was a Lapinian, she wouldn't be getting any luck from me since my luck is null anyway, Ryuk thought. That is, in fact, true, the system confirmed. But then Ryuk's eyes furrowed, and he asked, "Hey, system." "Yes, host. Do I really have null luck? Like, I know my luck stats say null, but I don't really think my luck is null. There have been a lot of good events in my life recently. Receiving the card from Old Jack was the biggest luck ever. And being helped by Duke the Lion was a blessing on its own. Without those strokes of luck, I'd never have reached here. But then you say my luck is null. It doesn't make sense, does it?" Ryuk reasoned. And truly it had been bothering him. Ryuk wouldn't say he had the best luck, but he also wouldn't say he was unlucky either. He had received an extremely important card from Old Jack, which was undoubtedly an act of luck, and he had even been helped by Duke the Lion, which was also good luck. He had managed to gain a good audience with the half-fallen one herself, and not appear disgusting before her, unlike most would. And one could even say that was already some type of luck on its own. So how could his luck be null? It didn't even make much sense to Ryuk at all. The system also has no idea. But if there's something the system could notice, it would be that host's luck doesn't seem to come from host's own hands. It seems to come from the hands of others. What do you mean? Like host receiving the authority card from Old Jack. That wasn't host's own luck. It was due to Old Jack's feeling of owing host's uncle, Uncle Bob. It was a repayment. Duke the Lin helped the host to the front gate of the Eclipse Citadel. That also wasn't host's personal luck. It was because of the authority card, something that was still the handiwork of host's uncle being good to Old Jack and thereby having a card in his grasp, commanding the good action from Duke the Lion. If host never possessed the card, he would never have been helped. So, the system's hypothesis is that while host has no luck of his own, but host can gain from the good actions done by others to acquire luck for himself. Also, host's null luck might not mean having zero luck, and therefore, with no luck, host would have bad luck or always find himself in bad situations all the time. The system thinks host's case might be a bit special and complicated, but one day host will definitely receive his answers, the system said. Ryuk thought it over for a while before eventually dropping it. Null luck or not, I'm growing stronger every day, and my sights are on my goals. I'm fine for now, and that's all that matters. All cleaned. The voice of Patootie rang in Ryuk's ears as he opened his eyes, finding her big pink eyes in front of his face. "Is there anything else you would like me to do next?" she asked him, and Ryuk shook his head, waving her off. "No, I'm fine." "Are you sure?" she persisted, and he nodded again. "Okay then, I will take my leave. If you need me for anything, you can simply message me. Since you've accepted me as your personal messenger, my contact number should be on your Apex watch soon. Goodbye now," she said before scurrying off from the room like a rabbit. She truly is a rabbit, Ryuk thought to himself, finding himself chuckling. But then his eyes flashed as he remembered something. "Also, I recently opened new contracting spots, did I not, system?" Ryuk suddenly asked. "Yes. Pets. Contracted space. 2. The golden notification flashed as Ryuk nodded. "Now I can contract 2 new beasts along with Isha. But right now, there really is no beast that can be added to the list," Ryuk mused to himself. His first contracted beast spot had been taken by Isha, who had been gifted to him by Uncle Bob. But now, he had 2 new spots after breaking through to the plane of ascension, and Ryuk, of course, wanted to fill them up. Isha alone, with her ice ability, had made him so strong personally, and he had gained a personal ally he could trust with his life. And now, he had 2 more extra spots. If he could find new beasts to take their place, then his strength would only improve even more, with new hopes of gaining new elements if he contracted elemental mutated beasts. But in the academy, there was little hope of that. He doubted the Apex store would be selling mutated beasts. Even if they were, it would most likely be cute, harmless beasts that, of course, had no use to the power focused him. I guess I'll just have to hold on to it for now until hopefully I find an interesting beast, he mused to himself. Of course, if he was going to contract a beast, it would no doubt be one with huge potential or even beyond that of Isha. It would make no sense to waste a spot on a harmless creature that wouldn't bring much benefit to him. The beast might be weak, but it must at least be talented. The strength could be fixed with his system and shop attributes. What about Host contracting the lunar rabbit? The system suddenly suggested as Ryuk's actions froze. What the hell? She's a student just like me. Even if she's only an outer student, she is a student nonetheless, Ryuk said out loud. To contract a student? How crazy was that? It's just an advice, Host. But Host must know, lunar rabbits are incredibly rare creatures with the ability to control the incredibly rare lunar energy element. Host, just know, races with the abilities to take powers from celestial bodies are incredibly powerful, with almost unending endurance as long as their celestial body is present. This is the main power of werewolves. They are lunar creatures, and the purest of their bloodline can absorb lunar energy, making them almost unendingly powerful. But even lunar werewolves themselves need the moon to be a full moon before they can truly exercise their true power. For all celestial creatures, there is always some type of requirement to be met first. That is true for all except the lunar rabbits. They can unendingly tap into the moon's energy, day or night, and have a myriad of abilities. Some of their popular abilities include their lunar heal ability, which allows them to take energy from the moon to heal. This healing is greater than the nature-based healing ability. They also possess innate charm. If Host contracts the lunar rabbit, Host can also gain a chance to awaken a new stat referred to as the charm stat. It's a stat that amplifies Host's appearance greatly, almost like charisma, except instead of beasts, it is targeted at intelligent races, including interdimensional beings. Host would find it easy to break into the thickest of hearts, manipulate others as easily as breathing, or raise a loyal army that will fight to death for Host with Tay's simplest of words. Lunar rabbits have exceptional agility and speed and possess sharp ears that are even better than those of werewolves. This is why the system thinks Host contracting the lunar rabbit is not a bad option for a second beast. The system explained as Ryuk chuckled. You made her look so powerful. But if she was so powerful, how did she end up an outer student? She should have been an inner student. He mused. He had seen the girl and he knew well she was weak. She was, at most, at the peak of the ascension stage, and at such a cultivation, ending up as an outer student was definitely below average. If she truly was talented, so how was she at that level? She should be a phenomenal genius instead. But still, thanks for the recommendation, system. I will at least pay attention to her. He thought to himself before suddenly, R-I-I-N-G. The sound of his watch's ringing resounded as Ryuk turned his attention to the watch and felt its vibrating pulse. Notice. New area. Training room is now available and open for use for everyone. New newcomer competing feature has been created. Newcomer Gods Arena. New Gods Arena features allow you to battle the other geniuses in a fight and earn Apex points as you rank higher up the rankings. The ranking has been distributed to everyone based on their hierarchy. If you want to change it, you can challenge opponents higher or lower and gain their spots to earn extra points yourself. Important note, Newcomer Gods Arena ranking is not the same as the true ranking and can't be replaced. It's only a ranking to earn more Apex points. Note, you can only ignore 3 battle requests until you're necessitated to fight. To understand more, you can follow the map and go check it out. New features? Ryuk mused under his breath as he looked at the notification on his Apex watch. Now there's a training room and some game that can be taken by the students to challenge each other. Seemingly, the higher one is ranked, the more chances of gaining Apex points. A nice side way to earn points, but Ryuk wasn't interested in that. What he truly wanted to check out was the training room. Good. Just when I was starting to get bored and afraid of going for another cultivation because I don't know when I'll wake up. He mused to himself as he rose to his feet and moved toward his bedroom to get a proper bath, which he had failed to get in the morning. He changed into a white hoodie and then headed out. Let's check out the training room. The training room. The gigantic words could already be seen on the skyscraper as a couple of students moved in, and among them was none other than Ryuk, with his white hoodie hanging loosely over his head. Once they stepped through, they were faced by a group of receptionists, and Ryuk moved towards one of them. A man. "Hello, I'm Staff Elian. You must be here to check out the training room, no?" A surprisingly young-looking man with a polite smile said. "Yes, I am." "Very good. Please, permit me to briefly brush my card against your Apex watch so I can access your level and direct you to a fitting training spot," the man said. Ryuk felt his stomach roll. The memories of how Instructor Ooze had rubbed his devil-forsaken card on his Apex watch and robbed him of 500 points were still fresh in his mind. Now, looking at another dreaded card dangling before him chilled his heart a bit. "I'll rip off your neck if you dare rip me off," thought Ryuk as he stretched out his hand. The man faintly brushed the card against his wrist, and instantly, the number 10 appeared on the card. "Wow, you're a top 10? And a human?" the man asked in shock as Ryuk's gaze dropped. "You have a problem with that?" he asked as the man hurriedly shook his head. No, of course not. Here, take this card and use the elevator by the side. This card is the key to your areas. Do not worry about it being stolen. It only activates close to your Apex watch, and of course it can't be shared with others. But also, do not lose it. Better if you submit it back and get it next time you want to go on. Have a nice training session, and don't push yourself too hard," the man advised, wishing him good luck. Probably from guilt after having looked down on Ryuk because of him being human. But Ryuk didn't react to it much and simply nodded before moving toward the elevator. Elian still had his green eyes on the young man as he leaves, looking at him with a bit of surprise. A human can get into a top 10 spot? What an anomaly! He thought, but threw the thought away as another student appeared before him, and he continued his work. Dai Thiering! The sound of the elevator opening up resounded as Ryuk entered into it. Just like Staff Elian had said, there truly was no button for Ryuk to click on. Instead, the card he was given flashed bright, sending a pulse of rippling waves to the walls of the elevator, which also flared with light before the elevator zipped into the sky. Really interesting tech, he thought to himself, throwing the card into his pocket. It. The elevator opened up, and Ryuk came before a blue gate close to 5 meters in height. With a small flex of his arm, he managed to push it open, stepping into what seemed like a small gym, with some other equipment he couldn't identify. Around the place, there were mini-rooms as well as upper and lower floors with various inscriptions. The most eye-catching ones to Ryuk were the Beast Combat Arena, Apex Reflex Simulator, Titan Weightlifting Chamber, Astral Combat Simulator Room, Eruption Resistance Room, Iron Will Pressure Zone, Phantom Duel Chamber, and a couple of others with less intriguing names. Ryuk was the only one currently present, and that gave him the chance to check out every room. Eventually, he arrived before a room that particularly drew his attention. When he grabbed hold of the knob, his Apex watch flashed. You have come in contact with a special cultivation room. Phantom Duel Chamber. You need 50 points to stay in for an hour. How weird. All the other rooms are free. Ryuk mused silently under his breath. But still, his curiosity eventually got the best of him. If all the rooms were free to access, yet this one was asking for points and was even recognized as special by his Apex watch, then there was obviously something different about it. Whatever it was, he wanted to be the first to witness it. Exchange 50 points for access. Ryuk called out to the Apex watch, and immediately the notification flashed. 50 points deducted. Points left. 950. You have gained access to the Phantom Duel Chamber. The notification rang out as Ryuk felt the doorknob finally open up, allowing him to step inside. Immediately, he entered. It was like he had come into a different world. A world of mirrors where his reflection was literally everywhere, and he could see himself all around. But then, step, 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 the sound of footsteps resounded through the room. Ryuk instantly turned his head behind him, but he found nothing. Rustle. At the last second, Ryuk's eyes snapped back to the front, and he felt a magnificent force piercing forth toward his chest. Quickly, he crossed both arms as the kick smashed into him, sending him flying into the distance. He revolved twice in the air before smashing into the ground with a loud bang, sliding for a few meters before coming to a stop. How heavy! Ryuk thought with faint surprise, turning his gaze forward, where a figure with both arms in his pockets could be seen, looking at Ryuk with a smile. Instantly, Ryuk paused in shock. Is that me? The Ryuk before him was one who had zero difference compared to Ryuk himself. He was wearing the same clothes, the same hooded shirt and trousers, the same face, the same height, the same color. It was almost like a clone, huh? Ryuk thought to himself. System accessing has been completed. This is an integration of mirror reality where host's presence is recreated. Host must be aware this recreation also means all of host's used abilities and skills in this reality will also be copied upon activation. And there's also a mechanism that enhances host's clone comprehension power, leaving it for growth according to the improvement technology in the room. In short, my own body strength has been copied into this clone of mine, and if I bring out my scythe, Ryuk mused as he activated Nano Reaper, the ginormous scythe appearing in his hands. His clone smiled amusingly as he slowly stretched his hand out, and another scythe appeared in its hand too. All of my skills and abilities will be instantly copied by it, and it is even given an ability in the room that allows it to use my own abilities better than me. Ryuk summarized the system's words. Exactly, host. So this training room gives one the ability to fight oneself in battle. I never really thought of it, to fight my own self, and a slightly improved version of it, to also force me to grow and test the true extent of my ability. No wonder it needs points to access. Ryuk mused to himself, when suddenly a voice rang out behind him. You really shouldn't be losing focus in a fight, you know? Slightly turning behind him, he could see the magnifying scythe edge from his clone, who was smiling evilly as Ryuk grinned back. And who told you I am? Ryuk thought as the scythe mere inches from cleaving into his head was paused in its trajectory by an ice sword that appeared at the back of his head, instantly recoiling the Ryuk clone back a few meters before it also shattered itself. You control ice too? How interesting! The Ryuk clone muttered as he raised his hands, and suddenly a gigantic ice sword like Ryuk's also appeared in the air before landing in his grasp. This lasts only for an hour, so I might as well make my points worth it, Ryuk mused, deciding to get serious and instantly rushed forward with speed toward the clone, who also dashed toward him with his sword in his right arm, their scythes poised. The sound was that of the scythe being thrown with speed toward Ryuk, whose body instantly bent to the ground, lying horizontally with it, and the scythe edge cleaving just a few inches from the top of his nose. Rising back up, the Ryuk clone was flying toward him, his ice sword slashing twice at him, and Ryuk instantly sent his scythe cleaving forward with speed. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of their collision rang heavily throughout the room as Ryuk's hands and scythe turned into a blur, slashing around with speed toward the other Ryuk, who was surprisingly able to keep up, his ice sword also slashing outward and blocking every strike. But little by little, the ice sword was getting chipped away. RUUSSSSTTTLL. The sound of rustling could suddenly be heard from behind Ryuk, and his eyes narrowed. He took a sword strike, retreating 3 steps, and instantly jumped into the air. Below him, the air was cleaved apart as the scythe returned to the grasp of the clone. But then, Ryuk cleaved down with his scythe toward the clone, who struggled to quickly block. Bam. A low sound resounded, one of Ryuk's entire weight getting held in the sky by the clone's scythe. But then, Ryuk kicked his legs toward the clone's defenseless chest, and he was sent flying into the distance. Immediately, the clone to raise its head while retreating, sighting hundreds of ice swords rushing toward him. Not having time to replicate Ryuk's abilities, the clone instantly cleaved out its scythe, slashing apart every single sword on its path. And just when it tore through it all, RIP. A snowy white sword tore out of the Ryuk clone's stomach from behind. Its movements paused, but only for a millisecond as it smiled devilishly, and cleaved its scythe toward Ryuk's head, to which he jumped back. The clone tried to follow, ignoring the sword embedded in its stomach, but it paused when it was faced with the sight of about 100 more floating swords around Ryuk. And before it could react, R.I.P. 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 The sound of swords piercing through flesh rang out as the Ryuk clone instantly became a porcupine of swords, ripping through every part of its body. It was repeatedly pushed back until the last sword ripped through its forehead, and it dropped instantly to its knees. Blood splashed out of its mouth as it looked down, finding a feat in front of him. Raising its head, it sighted Ryuk, whose scythe was raised up high in his hands, and then, R.I.P. The clone was cleaved from the top of its head straight down to its waist. Its two parts separated to the ground, soon evaporating into nothing but white energy as Ryuk kept his scythe away. How? How did the host defeat his own clone so fast? The system's perplexed voice rang out as Ryuk raised an eyebrow. It was the first time he had seen the system shocked by his own capabilities, and he couldn't help but smile. It isn't much really. There is a flaw in the room. I picked it up in the second exchange. And what is that? While the clone can copy my skills, it takes about a second of no distraction to do that. But what is truly flawed, glaringly, is the fact that even though it can copy my skills, it can't copy my combat ability. Even though the room may have a mechanism that can let its combat improve, perhaps more than mine, it still has to analyze my own revealed combat abilities to replicate them in my clone, which needs quite the amount of revealing form my side. All I need to do is overwhelm the clone with my own combat ability faster than the room's technology can't recopy, and improve it before passing it to the clone. So Host took advantage of the 1 second required for the clone to copy his skills to cut the momentum, by overwhelming it his myriad ice sword skill, and that distracted it for Host to got behind it and formed another wave of swords behind him. By giving me the clone a false sense of winning by stabbing only one sword, which is obviously not enough to kill it, and that distracted it from summoning its own crowd of swords. Then Host quickly overwhelmed it with already formed swords. Ending it with the scythe after that was as easy as breathing. The system analyzed deeply, getting a nod from Ryuk. So you see, it isn't that much really. No, Host. That is very impressive. Host's combat ability has been changed from the former use of dominating tactics to using feints and putting himself in his opponent's shoes to bring an end to it. That is something that wasn't present in Host's previous battle with Ignatius. The system declared as Ryuk's eyebrows furrowed. He had never really thought of it that way. And truly, now that it was mentioned, the system was right. Ryuk had been fighting while also keeping his clone's next actions in mind, trying to predict its response. His motion of stabbing the clone with only a single sword was so he could make the clone think him dumb, and when it had slashed its scythe toward his head, seemingly thinking it would take Ryuk by surprise somehow, Ryuk had already predicted that and had easily retreated, before ending everything with the cloud of ice swords. He had predicted his opponent's own thoughts, foreseen its preceding actions, and everything had fallen exactly as he had expected, making the battle as easy and seamless as possible. That was truly something he hadn't really done when he was fighting Ignatius and in all of his fights before that time. Who knows, perhaps this is the application of evolving combat ability, or increasing intelligence, Ryuk mused. But then, the notification appeared. While the Phantom Duel training room might seem not very effective for Host, there really is a way for Host to make it very effective. The system said as Ryuk's ears perked. He had truly thought that with him being able to overwhelm his clone, his 50-point requirement to open the door was a ripoff, but it seemed the system had a different idea. Host only won by taking advantage of the flaws in the mirror reality integration. If Host had waited 1 second for the clone to fully copy his ability, and also fought long enough for the room's technology to identify his mode of combat and apply it to the clone, then Host would have been overwhelmed. The clone would be well aware of Host's combat ability and also be capable of Host's ice usage. With those two combined and the improvement capability of the clone, then Host would most likely be fighting his true match, one who also has the capability to grow in combat ability, forcing hosts to also better adapt and then achieve the true purpose of the training room, which is to cause a direct increase in combat ability for its users. So the room is not useless. All host needs to do is wait and not go all out at the beginning of the battle. Allow the room mechanism to identify all of host's combat ability and all of host's skills, and then face the clone. Then it would be a worthy fight, and host will see improvement. The system explained as Ryuk's gaze sharpened. That truly made sense. He was just about to resummon the clone when suddenly, 5 minutes left before eviction from the Phantom Duel training room. Time passed so fast? Ryuk mused to himself. 5 minutes, of course, wouldn't be enough for the clone to copy all of his abilities and test out the system's hypothesis. So in the end, Ryuk could only snort coldly as he stopped. But of course, he wanted to make use of his full points and decided to wait the entire 5 minutes in the place. But then, 2 minutes remaining. Caution! 10 points will be deducted for every second that user remains in the training room after this time elapses. What the? You rip off! He screamed as he jumped to his feet and rushed away from the room. Having 10 points deducted with every passing second when the room itself was just 50 points to stay in for an hour? How was the math even mathing anymore? That was definitely a rip-off, and Ryuk sure wouldn't fall for it. Assuming he had been in battle, he might not even have been aware and kept getting ripped off unknowingly. The Ascension Academy was definitely no righteous school. It dared to even scam its students, and Ryuk just seemed to also be the one getting targeted, as he had clearly been ripped off by the instructor once previously. Y'all are after my damn points, and I've fallen for it once, but I won't be falling for it twice. He thought with a cold harumph as he headed out of the training room. But then he heard the sound of footsteps below him, and from above, Ryuk looked down, finding a figure walking below. Almost like he could sense Ryuk's prickling gaze, the figure also turned his face up, sighting Ryuk, before a grin appeared on his face. "It's almost like I can guess you would be here," the figure said, as he suddenly crouched a bit and then, boom! The floor beneath him shook slightly as he jumped into the air, soaring FOR 5 meters and landed in front of Ryuk. He was a towering young man, standing at an impressive 2 meters, a head above Ryuk, and exuding a deep aura of confidence. His deep red eyes burned with intensity, and being up so close made Ryuk feel as if he was standing before a predator, like a mutated beast stalking him. His dark hair, thick and slightly unkempt, glands naturally in a way that added to his rugged charm. And even though he was wearing a simple t-shirt and trousers, his broad shoulders were evident, and his arms were thick with muscle. He was of above-average handsomeness, with high, chiseled cheekbones, and held a knowing smile on his face as he stretched out his hand toward Ryuk. "Hi, I'm Fenrir," he said. He was none other than the werewolf with the crimson eyes, the one who had been referred to as Alpha by instructor Dravik Kane. "I'm Ryuk," Ryuk replied as he took the hand in his grasp. The shake lasted for just 3 seconds, but both of them sensed many things from it. He's no feeble human. His hands are calloused like they've held a blade so many times they have roughened up, almost like the hands of a hunter or swordsman. And he resisted getting crushed from the force of my palm, meaning his strength too is pretty noteworthy. What the hell is with this crazy heaviness? When Ryuk held the guy's palm, it felt like holding onto a huge rock. The sheer weight pressed down on his arm, and he had no choice but to exert a little force just to keep his strength stable. What was shocking was that he didn't sense any momentous increase in power from the guy's hand. That means that was just how heavy she hand naturally was. What the hell would happen if he clenched his fist and threw a solid punch? Ryuk could only wonder, but while he was surprised, his face didn't show it. Instead, he struck up a conversation almost instantly. "You seem to be quite friendly to humans, who are nothing but prey to your kind," Ryuk said as both unconsciously walked side by side to a random location, as if previously agreed upon. Ryuk's question wasn't just something he took from the top of his head. It was something that had truly bothered him. The werewolf was too friendly to him. Amongst the geniuses, he was the only one who had smiled and even waved back when Ryuk had appeared. He had even nodded when Ryuk finished the hierarchy test, a sign of acknowledgement at his existence. And now, when Ryuk had seen him in training, he had taken the first step to familiarize himself with him by offering a handshake. The stories Ryuk had heard about the old core hunters back in Grade E said that there were two apex predators most feared by humans. The first was vampires, who were labeled as outright dark. The second, none other than werewolves, who had an evil reputation almost equal to that of vampires. "I can't argue that," the werewolf replied. "But I must say, humans aren't the only prey to us. Everything on End-Earth is prey to werewolves, so long as they have meat in them. But that history of prey and predators is from the past dark era. With the appearance of nulls, it is now nothing but history, since all races have been bound under the terms of End-Earth's laws." Fenrir continued, "So you see humans, the prey of your kind during the dark era, as equals now? You, an alpha werewolf?" Ryuk asked with a smile, studying Fenrir's face closely. He noticed a slight pause in Fenrir's expression as he furrowed his eyebrows at Ryuk. "Obviously not," Ryuk completed for him, his expression also turning intensely cold. Right now, Ryuk saw himself as a human, and before him stood a creature known to thrive on the screams and flesh of his kind. The old scrap hunters might talk nonsense sometimes and exaggerate things, but the stories Ryuk had heard when he was young were enough to make him doubt whether he could ever accept a werewolf as just another student like him or even a friend. Their friendly conversation instantly shifted into something else, a moment where prey had met its predator. "I don't see humans as equals, just as I don't see any other race as equal," Fenrir said. "I measure everything with the only true factor in this broken world, and that is strength. No one is equal to me, except those who are either as strong as me or stronger than I am. Even if you were a vampire, known more as rivals to us werewolves than prey in the dark era, I would still see you as below me if you were weaker, and therefore a prey. That is my personal view of it," Fenrir finished, and Ryuk's eyebrows furrowed slightly. "So that's why he seems so friendly. He must have somehow sensed my power, and the thought of me being as strong as him must have echoed through his mind. That must be why he gave a nod of acknowledgement when I placed in the top 10, and why this discussion is even happening in the first place. He doesn't just think of humans as equal or below him, he bases it on strength, which in today's world is the sole determinant of how much respect a person deserves." Ryuk analyzed this deeply, as fast as lightning. Just 2 seconds later, he asked his next question. "If I may ask, what was your ranking in the hierarchy test?" "I'm number 3, Fenrir replied, seemingly uncaring about the ranking. "You're number 3, and I'm number 10. So that means I must be weaker than you, right?" Ryuk asked, and Fenrir nodded without hesitation. "Yes, you are weaker than I am. If so, why are you being friendly? You should see me as prey, shouldn't you?" Ryuk questioned, causing Fenrir's eyes to flash with light. He had expected the human to argue about being weaker, which was why he had placed so much emphasis on that point. But surprisingly, Ryuk had taken a different route than he anticipated. Fenrir was about to reply when his gaze narrowed, and instead he asked a question first. "If I may also ask, do you have bad blood with werewolves?" His reason for asking was simple. If somehow Ryuk's family members had died at the hands of werewolves, then there was truly nothing he could do to change Ryuk's mind. No matter what, Ryuk would never see him as anything but an enemy. If that was the case, then he might as well forget about trying to convince him or form a bond. It would yield nothing but a relationship of hate between them. "I don't. You're the first werewolf I have ever seen," Ryuk replied. Fenrir nodded before responding. "Your ideology that since you are weaker than me, you should therefore be prey to me, doesn't work like that. The world itself doesn't work like that. If it did, then there would be no reason behind this school even existing. Our instructors can rip us apart with a single skill, yet they stay in the same class as us and teach us to grow stronger. Do you think every instructor in the academy sees us, students, as their equals? No, of course not. But does that necessarily mean they see us as prey? Something they can hunt down for fun and kill at their whims?" Fenrir asked Ryuk, who shook his head in reply. It was true that the instructors could rip them apart. Their cultivation difference was no doubt higher than theirs, and even with Ryuk's own power, he still couldn't see the instructors' true strength. That meant the students and the instructors were far from being on the same footing. But then, did the instructors see them as prey because of this difference? Obviously not. So in the end, why are the instructors so strong and still take part of their important time to teach us? It's because of the sense of potential. The true factor of it all, Fenrir explained, causing Ryuk to raise an eyebrow. Yes, potential is truly what runs the world, even though strength is the true judge of it. We all might not be much to the instructors. Some of them might be able to rip us apart by simply tapping their fingers on us, but they are also aware that there are some among us who have the power to become just as powerful as them one day. In essence, we of the top 10 talents have the possibility of being as strong as each of the instructors themselves, and that is why they think it is worthy to take part of their important time to teach us. And that's also why the Academy test exists in the first place. It is to weed away the talentless students who aren't worth their time, and instead focus their attention on the students who have the potential to become just as strong as them. With more people at their power level, we have a better chance of fighting the invaders off our world and surviving. Even the instructors themselves aren't strong enough to do that, so they instead find talented ones like us and raise them up to aid them, hoping we surpass them and do an even better job out there. That's really how the world works. It works on potential. You might be weaker than me, true, but then that doesn't make you an automatic prey. No. Why? Because you have potential, perhaps one that might make you just as strong as me one day, just like the instructors hope. Fenrir explained lengthily, and Ryuk couldn't help but nod. He had never really thought long about such topics, but it seemed Fenrir understood it perfectly, and now he did too. So it's all based on potential in the end? Yes, because potential generates hope. None of us is beyond hope. We who are currently weak hope to one day be strong. The instructors who are strong realize that an individual's strength is not enough, and a crowd of strength is better. So they sit us down and explain to us about power, also hoping we grow as strong as them and realize their goal of a crowd of strength, better than single strength. So somehow, we all still fall back on hope in the end. Something seemingly so basic and mundane, Fenrir said with a boisterous laugh. Friendship based on potential. I never really saw things that way. Ryuk mused silently to himself. For now, the spark between both of them had cooled a bit. But still, Ryuk didn't know whether he wanted a friendship with him. He still somehow could feel something was off. Host. Making new friends is not a bad thing. If Host gathers strong enough friends, they might just be important in Host's future. And this werewolf is a little alpha. He is really strong. And not only that, he has massive potential too as an alpha wolf. The system notification suddenly flashed. But then, Ryuk was awakened from his thoughts when he was asked by Fenrir. Why did you never go to the God's Arena and instead came to the training area? The majority of the students headed there instead. Feel like the fights won't be worth your time? Or do you just not like violence? Fenrir asked with a chuckle as Ryuk shook his head. No, I just preferred the training room. It's the one that seemed familiar to me. He replied truthfully, but then couldn't help but notice the weird flash in Fenrir's eyes. Somehow, the red in his eyes was starting to flash brightly, forming a strange winged halo, but Ryuk ignored it and asked him instead, "What about you? Why did you never go to the God's Arena and come here instead?" Fenrir huffed. None of those cowards of students will dare challenge me, and there are only two people who are worth my serious all-out effort. Both of them, unfortunately, won't be leaving their rooms since they also view the God's Arena matches as useless. So I might as well check out the training room. And somehow, some of us top 10 will choose to come here instead. Fenrir said, as the elevator noise suddenly rang out. Both of them turned their necks to the lone door, which slowly opened, and another young man stepped in. Well, talk of the devil, Fenrir said with a beastly chuckle as Ryuk's eyebrows furrowed at the young man before them, who also raised an eyebrow at both of them before grinning. Just what is happening? I met an alpha werewolf and now a vampire. The person before them was none other than a man whose crimson eyes and crimson hair were enough to denote his race. Standing around 1.96 meters, a little taller than Ryuk, with a lean but well-proportioned build. His skin was naturally pale, not ghostly white, but smooth, almost flawless in complexion. His face was sharp and symmetrical, with high cheekbones, a straight nose, and a strong jawline. His fangs were currently visible as he was grinning uncontrollably. He was dressed in a normal crimson shirt and trousers, but with a long dark red crimson coat draped over his shoulders, held in place by them. His presence wasn't overpowering like Fenrir's, but there was something about him that Ryuk couldn't help but notice, his unique aura of confidence. When he moved, it was with the grace of a predator, solemn yet fluid, commanding attention with every step. Well, 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 a werewolf with a human. Talk of an unusual assembly? And I just told the human that you wouldn't be coming out of your room, being the red-eyed coward that you are. And then you suddenly slithered out from wherever you were hiding. Yet the sheer bit of coincidence, no? Fenrir's sarcastic and mocking voice resounded as the vampire chuckled in reply before coming to a stop less than 10 centimeters away from both of them. You must be forgetting you have red eyes too, you brawny barbarian. Even the human beside you has the same red eye, even if only one of his eyes holds it. So that means we all must be red-eyed cowards, he said as Fenrir clicked his tongue in dissatisfaction, and the vampire turned his attention to Ryuk, looking deeply at his right red eye. You should be the one named Ryuk. The bloodborne mistress told me about you previously, he said to Ryuk, and before he could reply, a harumph rang through the entire training room, coming from Fenrir. Talk of disrespect at its finest. Not even a handshake. I thought you bastard vampires were known for your extra elegance and manners, Fenrir said mockingly as the vampire turned his gaze to him. We show that only to those deserving. And a former previous prey isn't really the most deserving, are they? The vampire said, and Ryuk's eyes narrowed. It was obvious the vampire guy was mocking him. You see that, Ryuk? That is who the vampires are, and why they are hated by us werewolves. Firstly, you don't want to get close to these bastards because they are naturally born with no manners. Their so-called elegance and manners are only displayed when they want to rip something off you, or when you hand their ass to them. This was how their kind treated us werewolves when we met, until we beat the shit out of them, Fenrir said as the vampire laughed out loud. Beat the shit out of us? Werewolves? Really? Are you forgetting the fact that I, Sanguine, am the second-ranked most powerful student in the newcomer hierarchy? If you werewolves are that strong, how come an alpha like you ended up as third then? Sanguine asked with a mocking smirk, as Fenrir's eyes turned full red, his veins popping on his right arm, and he stepped forward towards Sanguine until there were barely a few inches between both of them. I already knew your bastard self would poke this in my nose sooner or later. So what say we go at it now and see whether that shitty ranking means anything at all? Fenrir spat out as Sanguine's lips parted and his fangs began elongating out of his lips, dripping with dark blood. Then let's see, shall we? Sanguine replied, not at all afraid, and Ryuk's eyebrows furrowed. He could sense there was quite an incredible amount of hate between both of them, and now Fenrir's talk of the werewolves seeing rivals with the vampires during the Dark Era seemed more true. Barely a few words were exchanged between the two, and now they were at each other's throats? Well then. Ryuk's speech pierced through the air, slightly dismantling the friction in the room. While you guys thug it out, I might as well take my leave. See you both later, Ryuk said, waving at them as he hung his hoodie on his head, dipped his hands into his chest pocket, and passed by them. But then, he barely took a step when a monumental amount of pressure surrounded him. Ryuk's eyes furrowed, a hint of anger flashing in them when he saw the chains of blood aura surrounding him, tying around his body, forcing him to the ground. Slowly, he turned a side-eyed gaze to Sanguine. And who gave you the permission to leave, human? Sanguine asked with a deadpan gaze. But all hell broke loose in the next second when the entire ground beneath the trio began enveloping in cracks. BANNGGGG. The dark red chains all around Ryuk shattered into pieces, sending strands of chains flying all around. He slowly turned back and stepped toward both of them, every single step of his shattering the floor into pieces until the entire walls themselves were vibrating from an intense energy source. None other than Ryuk. You both have never come before fear before. Pieces of trash like you, considering humans as your prey? How nauseating! Ryuk spat out, and in the next second, the entire area where Fenrir and Sanguine stood caved in completely as a monumental force slammed into both of them, sending them flying into the distance before smashing straight into the wall opposite and sliding down to the ground, ultimate shock flashing in both their crimson eyes. They hadn't seen the attack at all. It was so fast it was unbelievable, and so powerful it was enough to lift both of them at the same time and send them flying away. The floor before them caved into pieces as Ryuk's figure smashed into the ground, stepping forward one step at a time with a luminous red scythe in his hands, his body undulating with powerful frost energy that froze the air around them, turning it into nothing but shards of hard ice levitating around Ryuk, carried by a weird undulating force. I'll do you a favor and show you true fear. So much fear that the next time you see a human, you'll quiver in your boots. Every mention by Ryuk was like the god of death himself speaking his words out loud, shocking both Fenrir and Sanguine to their ultimate core. Slowly, the hair on their bodies began rising on end as if a monumental danger was coming their way, and Ryuk made up his mind. Host is advised not to activate the Nano-Umbral Reaper transformation or Host will be unable to make the class for the next few weeks. The system warned gravely, sending Ryuk's gaze downward, but he was too far gone to care. Every second of the discussion Ryuk had with these two bastards, he had felt put down every single event. He had been put down so much that he was starting to even accept it. Fenrir, whom he had thought was a chill guy, had referred to him as human when the vampire had come in. And now Sanguine himself thought Ryuk needed his permission before he could take his leave. They both saw him as something less. And not just him, they saw all humans as something less. That was why today, Ryuk would be striking so much fear into them that they would quiver whenever they next saw a human. And the price of not going to class for a few weeks was something he would very well pay to achieve his goal. Clap, clap, clap.